The lights that never go out. When a German female POW saw electricity in every American home, what she discovered shattered her reality. The lights came on at exactly 6:47 p.m., and Corporal Ingrid Müller's hand froze halfway to the candle she'd been preparing to light. She stared at the ceiling fixture in the prisoner barracks as electric light flooded the room, bright, steady, unwavering. Not flickering like the generators back in Germany during the final months. Not dim and yellowish like the rationed electricity they'd had before the blackouts became permanent. Just light, clean, white. Abundant light that transformed the barracks from a shadowy prison into something that looked almost comfortable. "They do this every night," whispered Private Anna Vogel from the bunk below. Anna was 21, had been a radio operator before capture, and she'd been in this Pennsylvania POW camp for 2 months longer than Ingrid. Every single night. At the same time, the lights just come on, and they stay on until 10 p.m. every night. Like clockwork. Ingrid couldn't process this. She stood there, still holding the unlit candle, staring at the electric bulb like it was performing magic. But the fuel, the generators. "How do they don't use generators," Anna interrupted. "It's just electricity from power plants. The whole camp has it. The whole town has it. Sergeant Weber told me that in America, every house has electricity. Every single house. Not just rich people or military installations. Everyone. Farmers, factory workers, everyone." "That's impossible," Ingrid said flatly. "That's propaganda. No nation could afford to provide electricity to everyone. The infrastructure alone." "Come look," Anna said, and there was something in her voice. Excitement mixed with fear, wonder mixed with despair, that made Ingrid follow her to the barracks window. Outside the camp was illuminating as the sun set. Street lights flickered on, bright and evenly spaced. The mess hall glowed with interior lighting. The guard towers were lit like beacons, and beyond the fence, through gaps in the trees, Ingrid could see the town of Harrisburg. Hundreds, no thousands of lights, windows glowing in houses, streetlights lining roads, signs illuminated on storefronts. The entire landscape was transforming from day to night without becoming dark. "My God," Ingrid breathed. "It's all real." "It gets worse," Anna said, and her voice cracked. "Yesterday they took a group of us to work at the local hospital, helping with laundry, basic tasks. Ingrid, I saw inside American homes on the way there. Through windows. Every house had lights on. Not 1 or 2 bulbs rationed carefully. Multiple lights. In multiple rooms. Some houses had lights on in rooms where nobody was even present. They were wasting electricity. Just leaving lights on in empty rooms, because they had so much they didn't need to think about conserving it." Ingrid felt something shift inside her chest. Not quite breaking, but dislocating, like a bone slipping out of joint. We were told America was weak, that their industry was failing, that they were rationing and suffering just like us, maybe worse. "We were told a lot of things," Anna replied, and the bitterness in her voice could have corroded steel. "All of them lies, but the real shock was yet to come. Because 3 days later, Ingrid and 15 other German POWs were assigned to a work detail that would change everything she thought she knew about the world. They were being sent to work on a local farm, not as punishment, but as part of a labor exchange program. The American farmer needed help with harvest, the POWs needed purposeful work, and the Geneva Convention allowed non-military labor for prisoners. Captain Morrison, who ran the camp, had been clear. "This is voluntary. Anyone who doesn't want to go can stay here, but I encourage you to go. It's good to see the real America. Not just the camp, but how ordinary Americans actually live," Ingrid volunteered. Partly from curiosity, partly from crushing boredom, but mostly because she needed to know. Needed to understand if what Anna said was true. If America really was so abundant that even common farmers had electricity in every room, in every building, like it was nothing special. The truck arrived at dawn to collect them. It was driven by a woman, which shocked them first, because in Germany women rarely drove, especially not large trucks. She was maybe 45, wearing practical farm clothes and a friendly smile. "Morning, ladies," she called out in heavily accented German. "I'm Martha Jennings. You'll be working my farm today. My husband's serving overseas, Japan occupation duty, so I'm running things myself. Fair warning, I work hard and I expect the same from you. But I feed well and I pay fair wages. Sound good? The German women nodded, too startled by this businesslike farmer woman to do much else. They climbed into the truck. It smelled like hay and motor oil and something else. Something Ingrid eventually identified as prosperity, and drove out of the camp, through Harrisburg, and into the Pennsylvania countryside. Ingrid pressed her face to the truck's side window, drinking in details like a woman dying of thirst. The roads were paved, not just the main highways, but side roads too. There were cars everywhere, not military vehicles, but private cars, dozens of them, driving to work or school or wherever Americans went on a Tuesday morning. Every house they passed looked maintained, painted, whole. No bomb damage, no burn scars, no empty lots where buildings used to be. Just normalcy, peace, life continuing like war had never happened, and the electricity. Dear God, the electricity. Every house had power lines connecting to it. Every streetlight worked. Ingrid saw a small grocery store with a neon sign, an actual neon sign, using electricity for advertising, for something purely decorative. In Germany, such waste would have been criminal. Here it was just Tuesday. Martha's farm was 30 minutes outside town. As they pulled up the long driveway, Ingrid saw a large barn, several outbuildings, a substantial farmhouse, and she counted 6 separate structures, and every single one had electric wires running to it. The barn had lights visible through open doors. The chicken coop, had an electric bulb hanging inside it. "Welcome to Jennings Farm," Martha announced, parking the truck. "We've got 200 acres, corn mostly, some soybeans, chickens, 3 dairy cows, and a vegetable garden that feeds half the county. You'll be helping with harvest today, but first breakfast. Can't work on an empty stomach." She led them into the farmhouse, and Ingrid's world tilted on its axis. The kitchen was huge, bigger than the entire apartment Ingrid had shared with her mother and 2 sisters in Berlin. And it was full of electric appliances. A refrigerator, an actual refrigerator, humming quietly in the corner. An electric stove, an electric mixer on the counter. An electric toaster, a radio playing music softly from a shelf. Lights under the cabinets, a ceiling fan rotating slowly, and on the wall, incomprehensibly, was an electric clock. "You use electricity to tell time." Ingrid blurted out in German before she could stop herself. Martha laughed, understanding the tone if not the words. One of the other prisoners, Liesel, who spoke better English, translated. Martha's expression softened. "Oh, honey, we use electricity for everything. It's cheap here, reliable. My monthly electric bill is maybe $5. That's less than I spend on chicken feed. Why wouldn't we use it for everything?" $5. Ingrid did the mental calculation, in Reichsmarks, in wages, in what $5 represented. For a German family, that would be a substantial expense. For this American farmer, it was less than chicken feed. The scale of the disparity was staggering. Martha cooked them breakfast. Eggs from her chickens, bacon from her pigs, bread from her oven, coffee from her electric percolator. Real coffee, not ersatz. The women ate in stunned silence, each bite reinforcing the same devastating truth. They had lost to people who fed their prisoners better than Germany fed its soldiers. They had lost to people who lit their chicken coops with electricity. They had lost to people who used electric clocks and thought $5 for monthly power was reasonable. After breakfast, Martha showed them the day's work. They'd be helping harvest corn using a mechanical corn picker, another miracle of American engineering and abundant fuel. "Normally my husband runs this," Martha explained, patting the machine fondly. "But I've learned, had to. War doesn't stop the harvest, and corn doesn't care about your personal problems." As they worked, Ingrid found herself next to Martha, helping guide stalks into the machine. Martha worked with practiced efficiency, but she also talked about her farm, her life, her husband overseas, her 2 sons who'd both served and thankfully survived. "One was in France," she said. "Might have fought against some of your people." "No offense, none taken," Ingrid replied in halting English. "War is war. Everyone fights for their country." "I suppose," Martha said, but she sounded doubtful. "Though seems to me some countries fight for better reasons than others. We didn't start this war, didn't ask for it, but once it came to us, we finished it." She looked at Ingrid directly. No hard feelings, understand? You're just a girl who got caught up in something bigger than yourself. But I hope you're learning something here. I hope you're seeing what a free country looks like. What a country built on working hard and treating people decent looks like. Ingrid didn't know how to respond to that, so she just nodded and kept working. But Martha's words echoed in her head all day. A country built on working hard and treating people decent. Was that really all it took? No grand ideology, no racial superiority, no Lebensraum. Just work and decency and enough electricity that you didn't have to ration it like gold. Lunch was another revelation. Martha brought out sandwiches, thick bread, real ham, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, and lemonade with ice. Ice in October. Ice just for keeping drinks cold. Ingrid accepted her sandwich with numb hands and took a bite that tasted like every lie she'd ever been told. "Mrs. Jennings," she said carefully in English, "you have electricity." "All time, never stop?" "Never stop," Martha confirmed. "Well, sometimes in big storms the lines go down and we lose power for a few hours. But mostly it just works. All day, every day. Why?" "In Germany," Ingrid said slowly, choosing words carefully, "electricity is special, expensive, for important things only. We have blackouts, rationing. Even before war end, electricity may be 2 hours per day. You understand? 2 hours. And you have all day for everything. Even for clock." She gestured helplessly, unable to articulate the enormity of the difference. Martha's face softened with something like pity. "Oh, honey, that's not normal. That's not how it should be. In America, electricity is a basic thing. Like running water. Every house should have it. Every person should have reliable power for lights, for cooling food, for making life easier. That's not luxury. That's just modern life." "But the cost is worth it," Martha interrupted gently. "Because when people have reliable power, they can work better, live better, build better. It's an investment in civilization. Your government told you electricity was luxury because they wanted to spend resources on tanks and guns instead of power plants and transmission lines. They chose war over prosperity. We chose differently. And that's when something nobody expected happened." Ingrid started crying. Not the violent sobs of the ice cream or hamburger moments other prisoners had described, but quiet, steady tears that rolled down her face while she ate her sandwich and stared at the electric lights of a Pennsylvania farmhouse. Because Martha was right. Germany had chosen. They'd chosen guns over butter, ideology over infrastructure, conquest over civilization. And this was the result. German soldiers eating sandwiches in enemy territory, marveling at electric clocks like they were seeing magic. Martha didn't comment on Ingrid's tears. She just handed her a cloth napkin, a real cloth napkin, not paper, because even that was abundant enough to use and wash and reuse, and kept talking about the farm as if crying prisoners were a normal part of harvest day. Maybe, Ingrid thought, in this strange America where electricity flowed like water and farmers fed their enemies, crying was normal. Maybe kindness made tears inevitable. After lunch, Martha took them on a tour of the property. "Want you to see the whole operation," she explained through Liesel's translation. "Want you to understand what one American family can build when they work hard and have the freedom to prosper." The barn was first. Inside, electric lights illuminated rows of equipment. Tractors, plows, harvesters, all mechanized, all powered by gasoline that apparently wasn't rationed. There was a radio mounted on the wall playing news. There was a telephone in a barn, connected to the house in case of emergencies. The dairy cows were milked using an electric milking machine. Their water came from an electric pump. Even the barn's ventilation was powered by electric fans. "This machinery," Ingrid said, touching a tractor with something like reverence. "This is more than most German farms had even before the war. How can one family afford all this?" Martha shrugged. "Loans mostly. Bank loans. We bought the tractor in 1938, paid it off by 1943. The harvester we got last year, husband sent money home from his military pay. We'll have that paid off in another 2 years. It's expensive, sure, but it pays for itself. One man with a tractor can do the work of 10 men with hand tools. Efficiency means profit. Profit means buying better equipment. Better equipment means more efficiency. It's a cycle that works if you let it. And the electricity for all these machines comes from the grid. Power company runs lines out here, charges us for what we use. Like I said, maybe $5 a month. That's nothing compared to what we make from selling corn and milk and eggs. Infrastructure exists to serve us. That's what government is for, building the roads and power lines and systems that let individuals prosper. Ingrid processed this. Government existing to serve individuals, not individuals existing to serve the state. It was a fundamental inversion of everything she'd been taught. In Germany, you sacrificed for the Reich, for the Volk, for the Führer. Personal prosperity was selfish, individualistic, almost shameful. The collective mattered. The nation mattered. You didn't. But here was Martha, casually explaining that government's job was to build infrastructure so she could make money farming. That profit wasn't evil, but good. That efficiency serving personal prosperity was the whole point. And somehow this system, this backwards, individualistic, supposedly weak American system, had built a nation so powerful it crushed Germany, while still having electricity for barn clocks. The chicken coop was next, and Ingrid almost laughed at the absurdity. Electric lights, electric water heaters keeping their drinking water from freezing in winter, an electric incubator for hatching eggs. Chickens need light to lay well in winter, Martha explained. Electric light is cheaper than losing egg production. Economics, not luxury, everything was economics. Everything was calculated on whether it increased efficiency, productivity, profit. There was no grand ideology, no appeal to sacrifice or duty or racial destiny. Just practical questions. Does this make my farm more profitable? Does this make my work easier? Does this improve my family's life? If yes, do it. If no, don't. Simple, pragmatic, utterly devastating to someone raised on blood and soil mythology. But the real shock was yet to come. Because after the farm tour, Martha invited them into her house for afternoon coffee before the truck came to collect them. "Can't send you back without proper coffee," she insisted. "Army coffee is terrible. Trust me. My sons complained about it constantly in their letters." The house's interior was even more overwhelming than the kitchen. The living room had electric lamps on side tables, an electric radio in a cabinet, an electric fan, wall sconces providing ambient light. There were photographs everywhere. Martha's wedding photo, her sons in uniform, her husband in military dress, family gatherings. Normal life, preserved and displayed proudly. But what broke Ingrid completely was the second floor. Martha took them upstairs. "Want to show you something?" and opened a bedroom door. Inside was clearly a teenage girl's room, decorated with posters and photographs and all the ephemera of youth. And on the nightstand was an electric reading lamp. In a teenager's bedroom, an individual lamp for reading in bed, not a shared candle for the whole family, not rationed light for only necessary tasks, an electric lamp for the luxury of reading in bed. "This is my daughter Sarah's room," Martha explained. "She's 16, staying with her grandmother in Philadelphia while I manage the farm alone. Sarah loves to read, goes through a book every few days. That lamp's so she can read at night without straining her eyes." She said it casually, like providing abundant electricity for teenage reading was the most natural thing in the world. Ingrid sat down on the bed without permission, her legs giving out. A lamp for reading, for pleasure, for a teenage girl's entertainment. While in Germany, families huddled around single candles, and mothers went blind doing mending by inadequate light. While German teenagers, the ones who survived, spent their evenings in darkness because there was no fuel for generators, no infrastructure for civilian power, no resources spared from the military machine. "Mrs. Jennings," Ingrid said, and her voice sounded strange even to herself. "In Germany we were told America was decadent, weak, that your prosperity made you soft, unable to fight, unable to sacrifice. We were told that German strength came from hardship, from discipline, from doing without. We were told that your abundance was proof of your moral weakness." Martha sat down next to her on the bed. "And what do you think now?" "I think—" Ingrid struggled for words in English, finally switching to German and letting Liesel translate. "I think we were lied to about everything. I think German strength was just poverty dressed up as virtue. I think discipline was just another word for suffering that benefited those in power. I think everything I believed, everything I fought for, everyone I lost, it was all based on lies. And the proof is this lamp, this stupid electric reading lamp in a teenager's bedroom, Because a nation that can provide that level of abundance to ordinary citizens, that cares enough about a farmer's daughter's eyesight to ensure she has good light for reading, that nation is stronger than any amount of fanatical sacrifice could ever make us. The room fell silent. The other German women standing in the doorway stared at Ingrid with expressions ranging from agreement to horror to desperate denial. Because accepting what she'd just said meant accepting that their suffering had been pointless, that their sacrifices had been for nothing, that they'd lost, not because they weren't strong enough, but because their entire understanding of strength had been backwards. Martha stood up and walked to the window, looking out at her farm. "You know what I think makes America strong?" she said quietly. "It's not our military, though we've got a fine one. It's not our resources, though we've been blessed with plenty. It's this. We trust ordinary people to make their own decisions. We give a farmer's daughter a reading lamp and trust she'll use it to educate herself. We give citizens electricity and trust they won't waste it. We give people freedom and trust they'll build something good with it. Sometimes that trust is misplaced. Sometimes people make bad choices. But most of the time, when you give people the tools to succeed and the freedom to try, they build something beautiful." She turned back to face them. "Your government didn't trust you. They controlled everything, what you could read, what you could say, what you could think. They rationed your electricity not because there wasn't enough, but because keeping you in the dark made you easier to control. They told you sacrifice was virtue, because they needed you to accept suffering without question. They told you abundance was weakness because they couldn't provide it, and didn't want you to realize that was a failure of leadership, not an inevitable fact of life. But we lost," one of the other prisoners said. "Greta, a former clerk from Munich. We lost everything. Our cities, our families, our future. How do we go home and tell people that it was all for nothing? That we should have been more like America? They'll call us traitors. They'll say we've been brainwashed." "Maybe," Martha acknowledged. "Probably even. But you tell them anyway. You tell them about this lamp, about electricity in barns, about mechanical harvesters, and $5 monthly power bills. You tell them about the choice Germany made, guns over butter, ideology over infrastructure, conquest over prosperity, and where that choice led. And you tell them there's a different way forward, a way that starts with trusting people, providing abundance instead of enforcing scarcity, building instead of destroying." Things were just starting to look better when the truck arrived to take them back to camp. The driver, an American soldier named Collins, noticed Ingrid's red eyes and asked if she was all right. She nodded, not trusting her voice. How could she explain that she was crying over electric lamps and reading lights? That her entire worldview had collapsed because a Pennsylvania farmer had more infrastructure than the entire German Reich? On the drive back, the women were mostly silent, each processing their own reactions to the day. But as they passed through Harrisburg, streetlights already on as dusk approached, every house glowing with interior light, neon signs advertising shops and restaurants, Anna leaned over and whispered to Ingrid, "Do you think it's like this everywhere in America? Or is Pennsylvania special?" "It's everywhere," Collins answered in German, surprising them. His accent was rough but understandable. "I'm from Kansas. Small town, population maybe 2,000. We have electricity too. Every house. My dad's a butcher, owns a small shop. He's got electric refrigeration, electric lights, electric everything. It's just normal here. It's what modern life looks like when your government invests in civilian infrastructure instead of conquest. But surely not every American has electricity." Ingrid protested. "Poor people, rural areas." "Well, not every single person," Collins admitted. "There's a federal program, Rural Electrification Administration, that's been working since the 1930s to bring power to remote farms and small towns. It's not complete yet, but they're getting close. Goal is for every American household to have electric power, because we believe it's a right, not a privilege. Basic infrastructure that every citizen deserves. Every citizen deserves electricity." The words hung in the air, radical and obvious at the same time. In Germany, electricity had been a tool of state power, rationed according to military necessity. In America, it was a right, a basic expectation of citizenship. The difference wasn't just economic. It was philosophical, a fundamental difference in how government saw its relationship to citizens. When they arrived back at camp, Captain Morrison was waiting. He'd heard reports from Martha, Apparently, she called him regularly to discuss how the work program was going, and he wanted to debrief them. "Mrs. Jennings says you ladies worked hard today. Says you earned every penny she's paying you." He paused. "She also said you had some strong reactions to seeing a working American farm. Want to talk about it?" Nobody spoke at first. Finally, Ingrid stepped forward. "Captain Morrison, I need to understand something." "Why show us this?" "Why take us to that farm? Let us see inside American homes. Demonstrate your abundance so clearly. You've already won the war.
You've already defeated us.
Why do you need us to see that your victory was so complete?" Morrison looked at her for a long moment. "Because winning the war isn't enough. We need to win the peace. We need you to go back to Germany and tell people what you saw here. Not to humiliate you, to educate you, to show you that there's a different way to organize society, a way that creates prosperity instead of poverty, freedom instead of oppression, abundance instead of scarcity. You're going to rebuild Germany. The question is whether you'll rebuild the same failed system that led to 2 world wars in 30 years, or whether you'll build something different. Something better. Something more like this. By showing us electric lamps and chicken coops with heating? By showing you that prosperity isn't a zero-sum game," Morrison corrected. Germany believed it needed to conquer others to be rich. That someone else had to lose for Germany to win. But America shows that wealth can be created, not just redistributed. That trade works better than conquest. That investing in your own people's infrastructure and education and freedom creates more prosperity than any amount of Lebensraum ever could. The lamp in that girl's bedroom represents something bigger than electricity. It represents a society that invests in its children's potential, that values education and growth and individual flourishing. That's the lesson. Not America won because we're better people, but America won because we chose a better system. Back in the barracks that night, the women of Ingrid's unit gathered for their usual evening discussion. But tonight the conversation was different. Tonight they weren't processing trauma or grief or guilt. Tonight they were angry. "They humiliated us," Sergeant Brahms said, her face flushed. "Parading their abundance, showing off their prosperity, rubbing our faces in our poverty. It's psychological warfare. They're trying to break our spirits, make us hate Germany, turn us into their propaganda tools." "Or," Ingrid countered, and her voice was steady despite the emotion churning inside her, "they're telling the truth. And the truth is humiliating. Not because they're trying to humiliate us, but because the gap between what we were told and reality is so enormous that seeing the truth feels like an attack." "You've been brainwashed," Brahms accused. "One day on an American farm, and you're ready to believe their propaganda about democracy and freedom, and it's not propaganda if it's real," Ingrid shouted, surprising herself with her vehemence. "I saw it, Sergeant. I touched the equipment. I flipped the light switches. I drank the cold milk from the electric refrigerator. I sat in the teenager's bedroom with her reading lamp and her bookshelf full of books she's allowed to read without government approval. It's not propaganda. It's just reality. And we lost to this reality because we chose to believe comforting lies instead of uncomfortable truths." The barracks fell silent. Then Anna spoke up, her voice small but determined. "I agree with Ingrid. I've been here 2 months longer than most of you. I've been on 3 work details seen inside multiple American homes and businesses. And every time it's the same. Electricity, abundance, infrastructure, prosperity. It's not staged. They can't stage an entire nation. This is just how they live. And we need to accept that and figure out what it means for us, for Germany, for the future." "It means we were lied to," said another voice. Kirsten, one of the younger prisoners. "It means everything the Reich told us was backwards. They said sacrifice made us strong, but it just made us weak. They said deprivation built character, but it just broke us. They said America was decadent and weak, but they're the ones with electricity in every home, and we're the ones sitting in prison camps learning that chicken coops can have heating. So what do?" Someone asked. "Except that we were wrong about everything? That our families died for nothing? That our sacrifices were pointless?" "No," Ingrid said firmly. "Our sacrifices weren't pointless because we didn't know better. We were victims of our government's lies just as much as anyone else. But now we do know better. Now we've seen the truth. And what we do with that knowledge, that's what determines whether our suffering meant something. We can go home bitter and defeated, clinging to old lies because they're comforting. Where we can go home and tell the truth even when it's hard. Even when people don't want to hear it. Even when we're called traitors for saying that maybe, just maybe, we should learn something from the people who beat us. The conversation continued late into the night. Voices rising and falling in German, debate and argument, and slowly, so slowly, acceptance. Not everyone agreed. Some clung to the old beliefs, unable to let go of the worldview that had given their suffering meaning. But others began to shift, to consider, to wonder if maybe electricity in every home really was possible. If maybe prosperity didn't require conquest. If maybe there was a different way forward. And in the darkness of the barracks, after lights out, Ingrid lay in her bunk, thinking about Martha Jennings's farm, about the electric lights in the barn and the reading lamp in Sarah's room, about mechanical harvesters and telephones and refrigerators and all the mundane miracles of American abundance. She thought about Germany in ruins, dark and hungry and broken, and she made a decision. When she went home, whenever that finally happened, she would tell everyone who would listen about the electricity. About lights that never went out, and power that flowed like water, and a society that considered these things basic rights rather than impossible luxuries. She would tell them about the choice Germany had made and where it led. And she would tell them that there was another choice available, a choice that started with something as simple as believing that every citizen deserved light. The darkness of the barracks wasn't complete. Emergency lights in the hallway provided dim illumination, enough to see shapes and shadows. Enough to read by if you were desperate. But Ingrid closed her eyes and imagined a different darkness, the true darkness of Germany's ruined cities, where night meant actual blackness, where artificial light was a distant memory. Then she imagined Martha's farmhouse, glowing in the Pennsylvania evening, every room bright and warm and alive with electric light. Two darknesses. Two ways of living, two choices for the future. She knew which one she wanted. The work program at Martha's farm became regular. Every week, Ingrid and her group would spend 2 days helping with various tasks: harvesting, maintenance, preparing for winter. And every week, the abundance became more normal and somehow more shocking at the same time. Normal because they got used to electric lights and refrigerators and mechanized equipment. Shocking because the more they understood how deeply this infrastructure penetrated American life, the more devastating the comparison to Germany became. On their 4th visit, Martha showed them something that made Ingrid actually laugh, a bitter, almost hysterical laugh that made the others look at her with concern. It was the basement of the farmhouse. Martha had led them down to show them the root cellar where she stored vegetables. But next to the root cellar was a washing machine. An electric washing machine with an electric dryer next to it. "You wash clothes with electricity," Ingrid said in English, her voice flat with disbelief. "Well, yes," Martha replied, clearly confused by the reaction. "It's easier than washing by hand. Saves hours of work. The dryer's newer. We got it last year. Before that, I hung everything on lines, but the dryer's convenient for winter or rain." "Why?" "In Germany," Ingrid said slowly, "my mother washed our family's clothes by hand. In a basin, with cold water, because we couldn't afford to heat water just for laundry. It took her an entire day, once a week. Her hands were always red and cracked from the cold water and harsh soap. When I was 12, she developed arthritis in her fingers. The doctor said it was from the washing. She was 38 years old, and her hands were destroyed by laundry." Martha's face fell. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. That shouldn't be necessary. Machines exist to do this kind of work so people don't have to destroy their bodies with manual labor. But the machines require electricity. And electricity requires infrastructure. And infrastructure requires a government that prioritizes citizen welfare over military expansion." Ingrid touched the washing machine like it was a memorial stone. "My mother's ruined hands represent a choice Germany made. Guns instead of washing machines. Tanks instead of infrastructure. Conquest instead of washing machines and dryers, and hours of life returned to women." "That's a good way to put it," Martha said quietly. "Every electric appliance is hours of life. Time you don't have to spend on drudgery. Time you can spend on education, or rest, or your children, or improving your life in other ways. That's what technology should do. Give people back their time. Give them back their lives. But the real shock was yet to come, because on their 6th visit, in late November with snow starting to fall, Martha invited them to Thanksgiving dinner. "I know it's not your holiday," she said through Liesel's translation, "but you're here on Thanksgiving Day, and nobody should spend Thanksgiving alone. Besides, I've got more food than I can eat by myself, and the Bible says to show hospitality to strangers. You're not exactly strangers anymore, but the principle holds. Captain Morrison approved it after some bureaucratic maneuvering. It's irregular," he admitted, "but the war's over and you're all cooperating with repatriation procedures. And honestly, I think Martha Jennings might teach you more about America in one Thanksgiving dinner than 100 propaganda lectures could. So yes, you can go." They arrived at the farmhouse on Thanksgiving afternoon to find it transformed. The dining room table, which normally served as Martha's paperwork desk, was extended with extra leaves and set with fine china. There were candles, cloth napkins, multiple serving dishes. And the smell. Dear God, the smell. Turkey roasting, bread baking, pies cooling. It smelled like every childhood memory of safety and abundance that Ingrid had thought were false. Propaganda images that never actually existed. "This is too much," Sergeant Brahms said stiffly. "We cannot accept such generosity from someone who fed you for 6 weeks while you helped save her harvest?" Martha interrupted, understanding the tone if not the words. Liesel translated, and Martha continued, "Nonsense. You earned this meal 20 times over. Besides, Thanksgiving is about gratitude. I'm grateful my son survived the war. I'm grateful my husband will be home soon. I'm grateful you ladies helped me save my farm when I couldn't do it alone. Letting you share this meal is the least I can do." The table was overwhelming. Turkey, a whole turkey, enormous and golden, in the center. Mashed potatoes with butter melting in peaks. Sweet potatoes with marshmallows. Stuffing rich with herbs. Green beans. Cranberry sauce. Rolls so light they practically floated. And at each place setting, a small card with the guest's name written in careful cursive. Places of honor, not prisoner stations. Not enemy seating. Honored guests. Ingrid found her name card and sat down, her hands shaking. Around her, the other German women were having similar reactions. Shock, gratitude, confusion, guilt, all mixed together into an emotional cocktail that made speech difficult. Martha took her seat at the head of the table and smiled at them all. "Before we eat, it's traditional to say what we're thankful for," she explained. "I'll start. I'm thankful that the war is over. I'm thankful my boys are alive and coming home. I'm thankful for new friends who helped save my farm." She looked at each of them. "I'm also thankful for the electricity that lights this house, for the oven that cooked this turkey, for the refrigerator that kept the food fresh, and for the infrastructure that makes all of it possible. We sometimes forget to be grateful for the ordinary miracles we live with every day." She gestured to Ingrid. "Would you like to share what you're thankful for?" Ingrid's throat was tight, but she managed to speak. "I am thankful to be alive. I am thankful for this food. And I am thankful for the lessons I have learned here, about electricity, about infrastructure, about what a society can become when it chooses to invest in its people instead of in conquest. These lessons have been painful, but they are valuable. They give me hope that Germany can become something different. Something better." One by one, the other women shared their gratitude for survival, for kindness, for food, for the unexpected generosity of enemies who became something like friends. When everyone had spoken, Martha bowed her head briefly, said a short prayer thanking God for provisions and peace, and then stood up with a carving knife. "Let's eat," she said. And her smile was like sunrise. The meal was extraordinary. Not just because the food was good, though it was rich and flavorful and abundant, but because of what it represented. Every bite was a reminder that this was normal for Americans. Thanksgiving happened every year. This level of feast was traditional, expected, repeated annually. Families all across America were sitting down to similar meals, and nobody thought it was miraculous. It was just Thanksgiving. Halfway through the meal, Anna asked a question that had been bothering all of them. "Mrs. Jennings, how do you afford all this? The food, the electricity, the machines, everything. Are you rich?" Martha laughed. "Rich? No, honey. We're comfortable, but not rich. We work hard, make decent money from the farm, save carefully. The food on this table, most of it we grew ourselves. The turkey I raised from a chick. The potatoes and sweet potatoes came from our garden. The cranberries I bought, but they're not expensive. The electricity costs $5 a month, like I told you. It's all achievable for ordinary people who work hard and live in a system that rewards productivity instead of punishing success. In Germany, Ingrid said slowly, productivity was punished. If you grew too much food, the government took it for the war effort. If you saved money, inflation destroyed it. If you built something successful, it was seized or regulated or destroyed by bombing. The system was designed to extract everything from citizens and give nothing back. We were told this was necessary sacrifice, that it made us strong, but it just made us weak and bitter and resentful. Martha nodded. That's the fundamental difference. In America, we believe that when citizens prosper, the nation prospers. Strong, healthy, well-fed, educated people build strong nations. Your government believed the opposite, that citizens should sacrifice everything for the state. But a nation is just people. If you destroy your people in pursuit of national glory, you're destroying the very thing you're trying to build. Things were just starting to look better when Martha brought out dessert, 3 different pies, each one perfect. Pumpkin, apple, and cherry. She cut generous slices for everyone, served them with whipped cream, and watched with satisfaction as the German women tasted American pie for the first time. Ingrid chose pumpkin. She'd never even heard of pumpkin pie before, and the first bite was a revelation. Sweet but not cloying, spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, creamy and rich. It tasted like fall, like harvest, like abundance made edible. My grandmother's recipe, Martha said, watching their reactions. She brought it from her grandmother, who brought it from England generations ago. Food is memory. Food is culture. Food is love passed down through generations. When you taste this pie, you're tasting 200 years of American tradition. Thanksgiving, family, gratitude, it's all baked into that pie. After dinner, Martha showed them something unexpected. In her living room next to the radio and electric lamps was a shelf full of books. I want each of you to choose one, she said. A gift, something to take back to Germany. Something to remember this day and what you learned here. The German women approached the shelf reverently. Most of the books were in English, but there were a few in German. Martha explained that her grandmother had been German-American and had kept some family books. Ingrid found a worn copy of Goethe's poetry, published in 1889. She opened it and saw an inscription, "To my daughter Martha, on her wedding day. May your life be filled with light and love. Mother, 1920. That was my grandmother's, Martha said softly. She loved Goethe, used to read it to me in German when I was little, even though I didn't understand the language. She said the sound of German poetry was important, the rhythm, the music of it. She'd be happy knowing her book is going back to Germany with someone who can appreciate it properly. Ingrid clutched the book to her chest, overcome. I cannot take this. It is too precious, too important to your family. Which is exactly why you should take it, Martha interrupted gently. Because it represents the best of German culture. The poetry, the philosophy, the depth of thought and beauty of language. That Germany, the Germany of Goethe and Schiller and Beethoven, that's the Germany I hope you'll help rebuild. Not the Germany of Hitler and war and conquest, but the Germany that gave the world some of its greatest art and literature and music. This book is a reminder that Germany was great once and can be great again. But great in a different way, great through culture and achievement, not through domination and fear. The truck came too soon. Ingrid and her companions climbed aboard reluctantly, each carrying a book, each trying to memorize every detail of this day. As they pulled away, Martha stood on her porch and waved, and every light in her house was on, not because she needed them all, but because she could. Because electricity flowed freely and abundantly, and nobody had to ration light like it was gold. She will remember us, Anna said quietly in German. After we're gone, after we're repatriated, she will remember that she fed German prisoners Thanksgiving dinner and gave them books and taught them about electric washing machines. And we will remember her, Ingrid replied. We will remember that an American farmer showed us more kindness than our own government ever did. That she shared her abundance when she could have hoarded it. That she treated enemies like honored guests. And when we rebuild Germany, we will remember these lessons. December brought news. Repatriation would begin in January. The German POWs would be processed, documented, and shipped back to occupied Germany in waves. Ingrid's group was scheduled for mid-February. 6 more weeks in America. 6 more weeks to memorize the lessons of electric light and Thanksgiving dinners and washing machines that gave women back their lives. Captain Morrison held a final meeting with all the prisoners scheduled for the next repatriation wave. "You're going home to a Germany that doesn't exist anymore," he said bluntly through translators. "The Germany you left is gone. The cities are rubble. The economy has collapsed. Millions are dead or displaced. The occupation authorities are working on reconstruction, but it will take years. Decades, maybe. What you do in those years, what Germany becomes, that's up to you." He paused, looking around at the assembled women. "You've seen how America works. You've seen our prosperity, our infrastructure, our system. We're not perfect. We have racism, poverty, problems of our own. But we've built something that works. Something that creates abundance instead of scarcity. And we want to help Germany build something similar. Not to make you American, you're German and should be proud of your culture. But to help you build a Germany that learns from its mistakes. A Germany that invests in electric power plants instead of Panzer tanks. A Germany that feeds its children instead of feeding its military. A Germany that chooses peace and prosperity over war and conquest." After the meeting, Ingrid approached Captain Morrison with a question that had been bothering her for weeks. "Captain, why? Why help Germany rebuild? Why not just leave us to suffer the consequences of what we did? We started this war. We committed atrocities. We deserve punishment, not assistance." Morrison looked at her thoughtfully. "Because revenge doesn't build peace. After World War I, the Allies punished Germany, crushed your economy, humiliated your nation, left you bitter and resentful. And 20 years later, that bitterness exploded into an even worse war. We're not making that mistake again. This time, we're going to help you rebuild. We're going to invest in your recovery. Not because you deserve it. You're right that Germany's choices led to unimaginable suffering. But because helping you rebuild serves our interests. A prosperous, democratic Germany integrated into Europe is better for everyone than a bitter, resentful Germany plotting revenge." He smiled slightly. "Plus, I've spent 6 months guarding German POWs. I've met women like you, nurses, clerks, ordinary people caught up in something bigger than themselves. You're not monsters. You're not evil. You're just people who were lied to, manipulated, used by a government that didn't value your lives or futures. You deserve a chance to build something better. And frankly, the world deserves a Germany that's learned from its mistakes." The final weeks passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. On her last visit to Martha's farm, Ingrid helped prepare the equipment for winter storage. They worked in the electric-lit barn, and Ingrid found herself explaining to Martha what she planned to do when she got home. "I'm going to be a nurse again," she said. "Germany will need nurses desperately, but I'm also going to talk to anyone who will listen about what I saw here, about electricity in every home. About washing machines and refrigerators and infrastructure that serves citizens. About Thanksgiving dinners and the choice between guns and butter. Most people won't want to hear it. They'll call me a traitor, a collaborator. But some will listen. And maybe those few will help build the new Germany." Martha hugged her, a real hug, warm and maternal. "You're brave. Braver than I could be in your position. Going home to ruins, to uncertainty, to people who might hate you for telling uncomfortable truths. That takes real courage. But I believe in you. I believe you'll make a difference." She pressed something into Ingrid's hand, an envelope. "Don't open it now. Open it when you're home, when things are hard, when you doubt whether anything you do matters. It's a reminder, a connection, a promise that what happened here was real." The repatriation ship left from New York Harbor in mid-February 1946. Ingrid stood on deck as America disappeared behind them, watching the lights of the city fade into the distance. Even from miles away, the glow was visible, electric light pushing back darkness, civilization illuminated. She thought about Martha's farm, about Pennsylvania's lit streets, about a teenager's reading lamp and a washing machine in a basement, and Thanksgiving dinner with honored enemies. The voyage took 2 weeks. Ingrid spent most of it reading Goethe, the poetry connecting her to Germany's best traditions, reminding her that her nation had been something good once and could be again. Other women read their borrowed books or wrote letters or just stared at the ocean, processing their experiences, preparing for whatever awaited them. They arrived in Bremen in early March to a Germany that was worse than Ingrid had imagined. The port was partially rebuilt, but beyond it stretched ruins. Rubble as far as the eye could see. People thin and gray with malnutrition. Children with old eyes begging for food. American occupation forces everywhere, handing out rations, directing traffic, maintaining order in a country that had forgotten how to function. Ingrid was processed through a displaced persons camp, given papers identifying her as a repatriated POW, and released with minimal money and directions to a refugee assistance office. She had no family to return to. Her mother had died in the bombing of Berlin in 1944, her father in Russia in 1943. She was alone in a ruined country with nothing but her nursing skills, her memories of American abundance, and Martha's sealed envelope. That night, in a crowded shelter with 40 other displaced people, Ingrid opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph of Martha's farmhouse, lights blazing in every window, and a handwritten note. Dear Ingrid, when things seem darkest, remember the light. Remember that you've seen what's possible when a society invests in its people. Remember Thanksgiving dinner, and electric washing machines, and the choice Germany can make. The lights in this photograph are on for you. They'll stay on, here in Pennsylvania. A reminder that abundance is achievable, that prosperity is a choice, that darkness doesn't have to be permanent. Be the light for Germany. Show them what you've seen. Build the future you learned about here. With love and faith in your courage, Martha Jennings. P.S. The electricity in this photo cost approximately $5 for the month. Never forget that. Ingrid stared at the photograph, at the lit farmhouse glowing in Pennsylvania darkness, and she started to cry. Not from sadness or grief or despair, but from determination, from renewed purpose, from the understanding that she carried something precious, knowledge that darkness was a choice, that light was achievable, that Germany could be rebuilt, not on the ashes of its failed past, but on the foundation of a better future. She would be the light. She would tell people about Martha's farm and American electricity, and the choice between infrastructure and conquest. Most wouldn't listen, but some would, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. 50 years later, in 1995, a German journalist interviewed Ingrid Müller, retired nurse, minor public figure known for her tireless advocacy for German-American friendship. She was 73 years old, living in a comfortable apartment in rebuilt Hamburg. The apartment was filled with books and photographs and comfortable furniture, and the lights were on. All of them. Every lamp in every room blazing unnecessarily, wastefully, abundantly. Why do you leave all your lights on? The journalist asked. It seems excessive. Ingrid smiled and picked up a faded photograph from her desk. Martha's farmhouse, lights blazing, taken 50 years earlier. Because I can, she said simply. Because Germany rebuilt itself to the point where electricity is cheap and abundant, and I don't have to ration light like it's gold. Because we made different choices after the war. Democracy, infrastructure, investment in citizens instead of military expansion. Because we learned the lesson that an American farmer taught me in 1945, that prosperity is a choice, and darkness is a choice, and we chose light. She looked at the photograph, her eyes distant with memory. This picture changed my life. It showed me what was possible, and I spent 50 years helping Germany become the kind of country where leaving lights on isn't scandalous waste, but ordinary abundance. Where every citizen has electricity, running water, infrastructure that works. Where we've learned that investing in washing machines and reading lamps and civilian prosperity makes us stronger than any amount of tanks. And guns ever did. The journalist looked around the brightly lit apartment. And it worked. Germany is prosperous now, peaceful, democratic. It worked, Ingrid agreed. But it took 50 years and the sacrifice of millions and the willingness to admit we were wrong about everything. I hope... Her voice cracked slightly. I hope we never forget how much it cost to learn these lessons. I hope every lit lamp in every German home is a reminder of the choice we made and the future we built. Because darkness is always an option. Authoritarianism is always waiting. The temptation to choose guns over butter, conquest over prosperity, ideology over humanity, it never fully goes away. We have to choose light. Every day, every generation. We have to keep choosing light. She died 3 years later, in 1998. At her funeral, someone placed Martha's photograph on the casket, the farmhouse with every light blazing. And above her grave, her family installed a solar-powered light that would shine every night, forever. A reminder of the lesson she'd learned and spent her life teaching. That darkness is a choice, and light is a choice, and we must always, always choose light.